everyone who subscribes to your newsletter will see that newsletter. They may not read it, they may delete it, but they will still see it. Whereas on social media, maybe 10% of your following will see that post. So when you look at it from a numbers perspective, newsletter marketing is way more worth your time. Hi, I'm Tawny Lara, author of Dry Humping, a guide to dating, relating, and hooking up without the booze. I'm also a writing coach and writing teacher, and I help you get your words out of the head and onto the page.
Well, we will dive into the lightning round. When did you first identify as a writer?
When I was 14, I began writing for my local newspaper.
Wow.
Yeah.
How did you know to even do that?
I was raised by a single mom. I share that to say, like, I learned how to use my voice and be really strong, and we saw I guess the equivalent of a pitch call, 100 years ago. And they were starting a local, like a teen section. And I was like, okay, I'll apply. And I wrote about legalizing weed and gay marriage. Wow. And this is in Waco, Texas. In the year 2000, I literally got hate mail that I still have.
Oh my God, that's incredible. What's your all-time favorite book?
The Doors of Perception by Aldous Huxley.
What is it about that book?
I was a weirdo, again, writing about legalizing weed at age 14. So I loved his perspective of writing about drugs from an educational and intellectual perspective. I thought that was really interesting. And I learned about that because the Doors are my favorite band, and that's where they got their band name from.
Oh, interesting. Okay. What's your dream writing routine?
When I go to Paris to hang out at Jim Morrison's grave, literally, I like to get an Airbnb near the cemetery. Like, I'm alone and I'm just vibing.
Amazing. Okay, what's your real writing routine when you're not in Paris?
Insanely frenetic and scattered all over the place. I have to actually schedule time in my Google Calendar to write for 30 minutes, write for an hour. I guess I'm at the point where writing is my job, and it's not this fun romantic thing. It's this yep, I'm on a deadline, got to do this.
Mm-hmm, totally. What's one piece of writing that makes you jealous you didn't write it?
Anything by Melissa Febos.
What is it about Melissa Febos? I can guess, but...
Well, I mean, sobriety and sexuality, she has this incredible poetic gift of writing about these subjects in such a beautiful, approachable way. Even if you're not sober or not a sex worker, you're interested in what she has to say, and I'm just gripped on it by every word.
Okay, so let's get into your writing and publishing journey. Let's do the Cliff's Notes, and then I'll stop you and punch in if there's anything I want to go deeper on.
Yeah, so I wrote for my local newspaper when I was 14, and I had this audacious gift of using my voice. But then shit happened, life happened, and I, experienced some childhood trauma, and I began self-medicating, undiagnosed mental health issues, and really I didn't write for about 15 years. So, and I share that to say you can always come back to it. I had to figure my stuff out, and I took writing seriously about age 29, 30, and moved to New York to pursue to be that writer in New York City, and I did it.
So what was your first big publishing? Did you get an early article when you were back at it, or what was your first big win?
My first big win, I moved to New York in 2015 when blogging was super cool, and I was blogging about early sobriety, and I had a couple pieces go viral that Huffington Post picked up. So that's how I began to develop some editorial relationships, and then I started learning how to pitch from there. And that was my first big one. And then I'd say probably my proudest was when I wrote a piece for Playboy. That was a dream. I was I never thought I'd be able to write for a magazine like Playboy.
Mm-hmm. And then take us up to the book.
So I began really finding my voice as a writer when I quit drinking. And I knew on some level I wanted to write a book about sobriety. And I found myself at this weird intersection of sex and sobriety. And I researched it as a person in recovery, but also as a journalist of like, I'm struggling with this. I can't be the only one. And there weren't a lot of people / anyone talking about it. And I was like, I guess I have to become that person. And I accidentally built the Sober Sexpert brand online, and I took a lot of writing classes, and I learned, okay, you want to get a book deal, a nonfiction book deal, you establish yourself as an expert on a subject, you get bylines, you get on podcasts, and you write a book proposal about it, And so my book began as a memoir, and I workshopped it as a memoir for years, and only to realize that it wasn't supposed to be a memoir. And once I pulled myself out of the story and wrote about it more from a journalistic research perspective, that's when the proposal really came together. That's when I found an agent, found the book deal, all of that. So I share that to say it's okay to have a lot of different Google Docs of like different book proposal ideas, because I think you have to get all those ideas out of your head to figure out what you're actually trying to say.
Totally. So how did you I know now you teach this, but how did you initially figure out how to write a book proposal and get that agent?
I took so many classes. I mean, tons of writing classes, both in person and online, about writing, about memoir writing, and then very specifically about book proposals. And I remember I got to this point of like, I could teach this. I know how to do this, but I just am not freaking doing it, And in those classes, you learn how to write a query letter and how to find literary agents to even query and stuff like that. So it's, it sounds really simple. It's like, how do you learn how to write a book proposal? Well, you take a class, or you read, Courtney Mom's before and after the book deal. There's resources out there. If you really want to do it, you figure out a way.
Yeah. And it also, with the classes, I mean, that's been so huge for my own journey, but it's also like, that's also how you build your network kind of, and how you, develop a writing community and all of these other things that are like byproducts that really are helpful.
Absolutely. I mean, that's how I got a Writer's Digest byline, actually. I was in a book proposal class, and one of the other students, we all go around the room and we share who we are and what we do. And she said that she's an editor for Writer's Digest. And I pitched her after the class. I was like, and she accepted it. It's like, this stuff sounds really simple when you say it out loud. It's like, you just need to be in these rooms, go to book launches, go to bookstores. Like, you're going to be around editors and agents. That's where they are.
Yeah, totally. Okay. So landing the agent, what's that story?
So I queried a couple agents when I was writing it as a memoir. I queried it and got rejected, and then cried and hid under a rock for 6 months. And I was like, this is never going to happen. And then I found there was a dream agent, Eric Smith, who I eventually signed with. And I was just like, there's no way he would sign me. He's too cool. And I actually listened to a podcast with him, and I was like, he seems like a normal guy. Like, why wouldn't I query him? And he literally called me within 24 hours and signed me. Like, yeah. So it's like, take big swings. Why not?
Yeah, totally. Okay. So now you're working with Eric. You've got this more journalistic version of the book proposal. Tell us about finding a home for it.
So again, tons of rejection. Eric and I refined my proposal. When you
did another draft or two?
We did another draft. So it's like, something I tell my students is like, your proposal does not need to be perfect when you're querying, because it's going to change when your agent's going to take another pass at it. And then, because your agent knows the editors they want to pitch it to, right? So the proposal you're writing right now just needs to get an agent. And then the proposal that is actually going to go out on submission might be a little bit different. So dozens of rejections. I mean, so many rejections, but you just need one yes. I had one editor who was very interested in my angle. And so the book actually, that went on submission, it was written for people in recovery. It was a guide to sober dating for people in recovery. And in my proposal, I mentioned how in the target audience section that sober curious people would still find this to be beneficial. And the editor that I ended up signing with at Quirk, which is an indie publisher in Philly, she was like, I love this book, but I want it to be for sober curious people. That way it can be a broader audience. And so I had to rewrite the proposal again, changing some of the language to be less addiction focused and more sober curious and mindful drinking and those kind of tweaks, which I'm really grateful for those edits, because a lot of the people who read my book still drink alcohol. And they've said that this book has been really helpful for them decentering their relationship with alcohol from their relationship with people. And so I'm really grateful. So I guess moral of the story is you're going to write your proposal a lot.
Okay, amazing. Okay, I would love you to respond, kind of your take on this. So if you would have asked me like 5 years ago when I was finishing my first full draft of Girl Gone Wild, I would have said big five or bust. I'm going to do anything in my power to get in a big five. And then whatever, I had an experience with a very fancy agent taking out another proposal. And I then it wound up, I got an offer from this small press, and I had gone through all these, the industry's been changing, I've been changing. And so now I'm like, yeah, that's like the best version. I wanted more creative control than I would have had at a big five. I wanted to keep more rights than I would have been able to do at a big five. And now when I think about like next steps, it's like I would even consider self-publishing over, like, I don't know if I want that experience unless I have a lot of leverage to negotiate or whatever. So I would love to hear how you feel about small presses, indie presses, and kind of your take on it.
Very similar to yours. Of course, like when we know nothing about the industry, we have this dream that like we're going to write this proposal and then HarperCollins is just going to call us and they're going to offer us 6 figures and it's going to change our lives. And I have learned both as an author and as a teacher that very rarely happens for a debut author. Very rarely happens for a second or third time author. Like you write this book because you have to write this book. I was very happy with an indie publisher for similar reasons as you, is like, I got to be a big fish in a small pond, where Quirk is, and I like that it's a boutique publishing house because I kind of got best of both worlds. I had an incredible hands-on editor, a hands-on publicist and marketing team, whereas friends that did get big five deals, their work got lost in the fold. I still did the bulk of my own press because that's just in my blood. I just genuinely we have our connections and I know how to pitch, but I know, I heard borderline horror stories of like my editor left, or I loved this editor, but I'm actually only working with the junior editor and I'm not even working with the editor I liked. So these friends got larger advances, but they also had larger expectations. Their publisher expected way more from them. And it was a significantly more stressful experience for these people. Of course, this is anecdotally. Whereas Quirk only had 4 books coming out in the fall of 23, which is when my book came out. So, and 3 of them were fiction. I was the only nonfiction. So they put all of their marketing budget on my book. They sent me on a book tour, which never happens for a debut author. Very rare. They sent me on a tour. They were very present at my book launch. It was a really good experience. Plus, they're distributed through Penguin Random House. So distribution is super important. So it's kind of best of both worlds, meaning, Quirk is the publisher, but when someone wants to carry my book, it's still listed on the Penguin Random House website. So it still looks pretty great. So yeah, I had a great experience. I really did. And an indie publisher often does mean a smaller advance, but that means you're most likely going to earn out your advance sooner, earning royalties sooner, which can help you probably get a second book deal sooner.
Uh-huh. Did they do an audiobook?
Yeah.
Did you read it?
I did. I had to audition, but I did.
Amazing. Okay. Any takeaways from that?
I loved doing my audiobook. Did you do yours?
I actually held the rights because I'm a podcaster and I'm doing my own because I'm like, I'm not going to audition for my book. It's me.
Well, and I should have done that, but I ultimately, it worked out well. But because I am also a podcaster, I was like, of course I'm going to read my audiobook. And I freaking loved the experience. I had friends who like warned me like, you're going to lose your voice. You need to drink this tea. And I'm like, I'm a public speaker and I'm a podcaster. I talk all the time. This is like, but it was recording. It was 3 days in a recording studio in Times Square. And it was in the same booth where John Turturro recorded his book and Norman Reedus recorded his book. So it was very glamorous, because I will say nothing about writing a book is glamorous, but the audiobook experience, it was really fun.
And then did they pay you like one fee for that, or do you still get royalties on the audiobook?
So I got a fee. I was paid as a voice actor, for the book. So that was deducted from my advance that I quote unquote owe. So when you get your advance from a publisher, you don't get royalties until you quote earn out your advance. And so I like talking figures. I got $15,000 for my book. So and I got $15,000, which is pretty decent for an indie publisher debut.
Actually phenomenal for an indie publisher debut.
And I got $6,000 for the audiobook. So I have to earn out $15,000 minus $6,000. So I didn't get a check for $6,000. They just deducted that.
Oh, gotcha.
So I quote, owe my publisher less. But people get kind of freaked out when I say, owe your publisher. You're never going to be in debt. You just may never see royalties.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get into the fun. I'm really excited to talk to you about this because I'm obviously planning my own book tour situation. So tell us about the PR. Did you know from the beginning, like you knew they had in-house, but did you know from the beginning, like, I'm going to really like take the bull by the horns on this one? And like, what was your game plan?
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that I had been promoting this book before I even got the book deal because I had been writing and talking about my subject for years. And I was very public about, I got this book deal and I documented the process, the writing process and the publishing process. And just, as a journalist, as a podcaster, I knew how to pitch. I knew how to get on podcasts. And I will say, I wish I didn't work as hard because I think that my book's publicist didn't have to work as hard because I worked so freaking hard. Like, to be honest, every piece of press that my book got, I got it except for one. They got me one interview with the Irish Independent. But I got myself in the New York Times. I got myself on Dan Savage, NPR. I mean, I did all of that, and that's what I teach classes on now is like, I teach people how to do their pre-order campaign. I teach people how to get on podcasts because it honestly, launching my own book taught me that I know how to do PR. Really, PR is just the other side of journalism. I knew how to pitch an essay. Now I'm pitching myself as an expert, like, you should feature this book because you should interview me because because as journalists and podcast hosts, you get tons of pitches. You know what a press release looks like. So I knew what a good press release looked like. I knew what I ignored as a host, and I knew what actually grabbed my attention. So I really taught myself.
Totally. I always tell, like, when I teach my platform class, like, do not pitch yourself first. That is my biggest pet peeve as a podcaster when someone's like, I'm blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, do not give a fuck. Tell me how you can help me.
Tell me how your expertise will benefit my listeners.
Yes. Exactly. How'd you manage all this? Big spreadsheet, lots of hustle. What was the behind the scenes?
All of the above. And I will say I have a virtual assistant who is amazing. When I say virtual, she is a human being, not AI. I've worked with her for 4 years now. And so we worked together. Like, I would give her names and she would help me organize them on a spreadsheet. She would help me track my pitches, help me find contact information. So that's something that I will say, it's a lot cheaper. If you know how to pitch, it is so much cheaper to pay a virtual assistant than it is to pay a publicist. Paying a publicist it could be like $5-6 grand a month. Whereas paying a virtual assistant, $50-$60 an hour. And it's absolutely worth your time. I couldn't have done what I did without having an assistant because, you know, you're not being paid to promote your book, right? I still had a job. I still had a day job. I still had a freelance career. I still had a podcast. I still had tons of stuff going on. So it's like doing your own press is not necessarily paying the bills.
Mm-hmm. And then, I mean, you did a long, like, it wasn't like some people are like, I promote my book for a month or two and then I'm done. And I never got I feel like you're still promoting your book.
Girl, I will say this. Yes, I'm still promoting my book because I get to sound very full of myself, but like my book was ahead of its time. People are just now catching on to the importance of sober dating and sober curious dating. Earlier, I mentioned how many rejections I got because people didn't get it. Now they're getting it. So there's that, but there's also like, I did a 6-month pre-order campaign, which I would not recommend to anybody because I was so focused on getting those pre-orders. But I think my favorite thing that I did was I did an advice column on Substack, and that I saw more pre-orders come from that than through social media. Whereas social media promotion is great, whether it's you promoting or your friends or influencers are posting about your book. People on Instagram are not buying. They want free, digestible sound bites and content. But newsletters, you know this, you teach newsletter classes, right? Like, newsletter marketing is significantly more effective. So if I were to do it all over again, I would have focused more on that kind of stuff.
Tell me about your pre-order campaign.
So because the book Dry Humping is about sober sex and dating, I did an advice column on Substack. Again, a column that I had pitched for years to editors that I got rejected a ton of times. And I was like, fuck it, I'm going to self-publish. I'm going to do this on my own on Substack. And I'm really glad I did that. So that was a way. It was a weekly advice column where people would submit questions. I would also just pull questions from doing press that I'm always doing. Like, I know a lot of common questions that I would get. So that was a big one. Going on tons of podcasts, tapping into my existing network. You know, as a podcast host in the sobriety space, I knew other podcast hosts. So I reached out to them, and we all, you know this, we all kind of help each other promote because we know how it is. And something else that I did, I was hosting a lot of sober events here in New York City. And I brought a physical copy of my book to sober events with a QR code. It's like, here's, flip through my book. Here's the QR code, pre-order here. A friend of mine owns a non-alcoholic bottle shop in Brooklyn called Minus Moonshine. And they lovingly had my book with the QR code at their cash register. So people would be checking out and people would look at my book and they would pre-order from there. And now they sell my book at the shop. So it's like, I share all of that to say doing a pre-order campaign can feel really overwhelming, but it really is just tapping into your existing network. Whether it's, even if you don't have a podcast or have all these influencer-esque connections, you still have a network of people that care about you and support you, even if it's like a book club that you're part of or a volunteer organization. Like, you have a list of people who care about you and they want to help you. You just need to let them know what you need.
That's totally true. And what's so funny is the fastest people to pre-order my book have been people I went to high school with.
Yes, alumni organizations, your professional networks. These are people who are like, you know, people in our world, it's like, oh yeah, she has a book coming out. Like, I
I'll
know
get to it. Yeah,
I'll get to it. But people in our alumni networks or people that I've met at the dog park, they don't know anyone who has a book coming out, and they are so excited to know someone who has a book coming out. So something that I talk about in my PR classes and with clients is like, I reframe publicity as just sharing with enthusiasm.
That's such a good framing.
I do this thing and I'm really excited about it. Because self-promotion can feel really icky, but you wrote this book, right? Like you're excited about this book. That's all you have to share from.
Okay, amazing. Just want to pick your brain really quick. So you were writing like more journalistic nonfiction. I'm writing memoir. How do you feel like your strategy would have changed if it would have been the memoir version of your book that got published?
Honestly, not too much, because it's still the same subject. You know, if it was a memoir about sober sex and sober dating, I still would have reached out to the same people. My talking points would have been different, of course, but I would have approached it the same way. Like, whatever your book is about, right? Like, I would say this is where media training comes in. And this is what I help people with, is like writing out your talking points. And like you just said, how those talking points will help podcast listeners, how your expertise will help when you're pitching an editor, say for Business Insider or Huffington Post. Why will readers care about your expertise? Keeping that in mind with your pitch, even if it's, quote, just a memoir, like your expertise is your lived experience, and don't diminish that at all.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so you mentioned Substack and you're very active on there, and that's been a big part of your strategy. So tell me about how that has changed the game for you and how you've seen it change the game for other writers.
I am so passionate about just newsletters in general. It doesn't have to be Substack. It's just where we are. I really like newsletters. One big thing is, like we said earlier, people do not buy from social media. They buy from email marketing. And this is where it can feel kind of icky because we're talking about marketing a physical product. It's like when your book is on a shelf or it's about to be on a shelf, it's no longer this passion project that's living in your head. It is a physical item that has to move volumes. People are becoming disillusioned with social media and using less of it because it's very pay to play. I don't know if a lot of people know this, but if you've noticed lately that you're not seeing a lot of your friends' content on Instagram, it's because social media is prioritizing paid and boosted content. So if you want to play that game. But when you send out a newsletter, everyone who subscribes to your newsletter will see that newsletter. They may not read it, they may delete it, but they will still see it. Whereas on social media, maybe 10% of your following will see that post. So when you look at it from a numbers perspective, newsletter marketing is way more worth your time.
Mm-hmm. Any tips on what your advice column, but anything that you've been like, this really hit on Substack, or this has been a part of my paid strategy? Or
I tried so many different paid strategies. I've been on there for about 2.5 years now. And I tried the advice column behind a paywall, and that didn't stick. But what has stuck lately is I now do a pitching column called Behind the Pitch within my newsletter. And that's literally where I break down a pitch to an editor, to a podcast host, to a producer. I share a literal screenshot of my pitch, including the subject line, how many times I followed up, how many rejections it got. I share that, and that has been super valuable for people. People want to pitch, they just don't know how. So I think for people like us who are educators and we know that we have valuable insight, I think that is what works for a paid strategy. For people who are not necessarily teachers or don't want to educate on their Substack, I think you need to play around and find what works for your audience. It's a lot of throwing spaghetti at the wall, to be honest. It's a lot of people, like, unless you're famous, like, people from experience don't want to pay for like an essay behind a paywall. I don't know. Have you had any luck with that?
I know. I think you're thinking about it exactly right. But like, speaking about friends and things like that, it's like, okay, if you're not going to educate, which not everybody should or needs to or has that skill set, that's okay. You can make it like NPR style. Most of the content is free, but if you want to support, you can do it that way. You can also build community behind a paywall and have that be the thing that people pay for, which, it's hard to build. It's hard to find your community. So sometimes that can be very valuable.
I'm also seeing if you don't want to do the education route and you do want to share essays behind a paywall, something that I've seen work is where the essay is free, but you do the audio narration and that's behind a paywall. That people like that because Substack does do this auto-generated like AI voice, but people subscribe to your newsletter because they like you, right? They want to hear your voice or they want to read your voice. So if you're open to maybe reading aloud your essay, I would say that's a pretty quick way you could start monetizing.
I like that a lot. And I also just think some of it with the paywall can just come down to if there's things you don't want the whole internet to read, put it behind a paywall. And like, it's okay if 10 people read that, like whatever.
Exactly. I mean, I think the whole metrics thing has just fucked us up of like, I only have 10 subscribers. And I'm like, if you have 10 paying subscribers, that's a lot. That's 10 people who actually care about what you're doing. They're gonna buy your book. They're gonna do whatever you're doing. And it's we have this, I think social media has just screwed us up so much where it's like, I only have this many followers. I only have this many subscribers. And like, even if you have 100 free subscribers, that's 100 people who gave you their email address because they want to know what you're doing. So I think if you could reframe it and looking at it like that, as opposed to only 100 of like, whoa, 100 people gave me their email address.
Totally.
What am I going to do with this?
Okay. So then you did a card deck.
Yeah, I did
How did you get the idea? How did that happen?
Well, I will say I love tarot. I love cards in general, like tarot cards or oracle cards. And I noticed that card decks were having a moment in publishing. Like if you've been to a bookstore lately, you've seen the cash register has like 10 different card decks there. Maybe it's like different types of tarot decks. Maybe they're self-help. Maybe they're recipe cards. But card decks are having a moment. So, but I noticed there was no sobriety deck. And so I asked my podcast co-host, like, hey, what do you think? Like, should we do this? And so I asked my agent, and he had never represented a card deck before, but he was down to try it. And I loved that adventurous spirit. And so he signed my co-host. We worked on the card deck together on Zoom for like hours and hours, just in a live Google Doc, writing it. So you write a proposal. It's the same as writing a book proposal. You're just writing a card deck proposal. So instead of sample chapters, you're including sample cards. And you can do that just by text, or if you are a visual person, you can add some visuals. We are not visual artists, but so like we just added like a mood board to show them like our podcast is about sobriety and rock and roll and grit, so we put some images together to show that. And we sold it to Penguin Random House and got a deal and got an advance. I got more for that than I got for my book, which is hilarious. We got 20 grand for the card deck.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so now that's on Penguin Random House. It's distributed through Penguin Random House. So, and it's something that I teach classes on now is like, cause people want card decks, I think, because at least from our perspective, Lisa and we had each written sobriety books, but for some people, the thought of reading a book could be overwhelming, but a deck is very like social media adjacent. It's more bite-sized where you can pull a card and like very, very similar to tarot is like, I'm going to pull a card for the day and I'm going to reflect on this for the day. And that feels really approachable to people. And so I like working with people to help them bring their card deck ideas to life and helping them find a deal for it.
So what did you learn on the getting that card deck out in the world? I mean, obviously a Penguin Random House. So were you kind of like, I'm actually gonna take a little chiller route this time, or did you still go hard?
Very chill. Very chill. It was actually, so I learned that Random House, they were like, we do a very different approach to pre-orders and marketing with card decks. People usually don't pre-order a card deck. So I was burned out from my deck or from the book coming out. In between that, my husband and I also launched a non-alcoholic drink. So I had been in launch mode. Like I was living in launch mode. And I will also say, having a co-author was such a game changer because we shared everything. We split the podcasts that we went on. We split the PR that we were doing. So it was just so much easier to have a buddy to do it with. And so now I've basically have a product line that a lot of non-alcoholic bottle shops actually carry my book, my drink, and my card deck.
Awesome.
Because they're all complementary. You know, they make sense together in a non-alcoholic bottle shop. People are curious about sober dating. They're looking for a non-alcoholic drink. Oh, cool, this book is here. Or they're looking at this book like, oh, cool, she has a drink too. So I've accidentally created this little ecosystem.
Brilliant. I love ecosystem thinking and I admire your hustle.
I'm a Capricorn.
I don't know what that means, but I like it. So, okay, what's next for you? Do you have another book in your mind?
So I actually am working on a memoir now. I'm describing it as a mixtape memoir where each chapter is about a different song or album that means something to me. And I'm having a lot of fun with that. And I actually look forward to sitting down and working on it. And I got the inspo for it at Jim Morrison's grave.
So it's not the same memoir that you were writing initially.
No. It's after, I believe it or not, I'm sick of talking about sobriety and mental health. I've been talking about it for literally 10 years, Courtney, 10 years. And so I moved to New York to pursue music journalism, and I had to get my shit together first. So here we are 10 years later. I've built this brand. I've built this ecosystem, and I'm getting back to my music journalism roots, and it's really exciting and it's fun. And I'm just writing about, albums and songs and artists that meant something to me and my journey. And it just feels, it's not self-help. This actually feels more like an artistic exploration of who I am as a person, as opposed to here's some resources,
I love that. Any bucket list writing goals?
I want to make a living from being a writer. You get it. I've been very transparent about the finances. Like $15,000 for a book is not that much money. And you know how much time and energy and effort it takes to write and promote it. And so I want to make a living being a writer, and I love teaching. I think I'll always teach. I really love teaching. So I would love to pay the bills doing all of the creative stuff that I'm doing and not have to be so scrappy. I think I'll always be scrappy, but I want to see this ecosystem that I've built really take off. So my husband and I can go on a honeymoon.
I got to get back to Paris.
I need to go back to Paris. I need to visit Jim again.
Okay, quick lightning round. What's one piece of writing advice you wish you could give your former self?
The writing advice that changed my life. I actually just wrote about this for LitHub. I can share with you for the show notes. A poet, Ruth Dannon, in a writing class said to let yourself write bad. And that just blew my mind. It rocked my socks off. Like I realized, wow, perfectionism is getting in the way of actually getting words on the page. And hearing her say those words, let yourself write bad, completely changed my life, changed my approach to creativity. That's advice that I share in all of my classes. And I wrote about it in LitHub, really framing it as her advice meets Anne Lamott's shitty first drafts. You just have to get words down. And that might seem really 101, but I think we forget that. Just write. And I'm going to say one more thing. Something I've been doing lately is I'm sending audio notes to myself and then copy and pasting those transcriptions into a Google Doc. And I'm like,
so you have something to get started. That's
yes.
I love that tip. Yeah. I say that
I'm
too.
like, oh my God, that was 500 words.
And then you have like the narrative down, or like make a grocery list, like just anything to like let your stupid lizard brain like
yes.
get the first draft down. Yeah.
Well, and there's something to articulating your thoughts, because articulating your thoughts through words, because sitting at the computer can feel very daunting and like, oh my God, I have to write. But if you're like waiting for the subway and you're like, you have an idea, I literally send myself a voice note and I get it out, and then I get home and put it in a Google Doc, and it's like, okay, I can start with that.
Brilliant. One tip for writers trying to get a book published:
just keep going. I will say you need to see rejection as part of the publishing process.
Yeah, for sure.
It's part of it. Like, there's no way around it.
Just try not to develop a kink for it.
That's so funny. I challenge my students. I'm like, right now, because, like, depending on where it is, it's like, try to get 5 rejections by the end of the year.
Yeah.
Try to get 5 rejections before the summer or whatever it is, because I feel like if you can frame it as more empowering of like this thing I'm collecting, as opposed to I'm a worthless piece of shit and no one's going to care about this book ever.
Yeah.
Someone will care. You just have to keep going.
Yes. Same with stand-up too. I'm like, bombing kind of feels good.
Yeah. It's feedback. It's information.
Yeah. What's your all-time favorite piece of your own writing?
My Playboy essay, I wrote about how I pegged a Trump supporter.
Oh my God.
This was MAGA 1.0 when Trump supporters were a little bit
it's
different.
Almost quaint. Yeah.
Oh my God. But, it really, yes, it's a sex essay about pegging a Trump supporter, but it's really about how the tagline is I opened his mind and his butthole. I gave him space to talk and ask questions. And I don't know if I don't know how he voted after that, but it was a really beautiful little relationship where it inspired critical thinking on both sides of the aisle. And I think we need more conversations like that.
Totally. You're wonderful. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time. How can listeners find you online?
Substack. Don't follow me on Instagram. I'm never there. Find me on Substack. My website is tawnylara.com.
What's your Substack called?
It's called Beyond Liquid Courage. If you want to take a class, I also teach at writingworkshops.com like Courtney does. And if you're looking for a non-alcoholic drink to try, drinkparentheses.com is my non-alc spirit.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of The Bleeders. This is a video episode, so you can listen to it on the podcast feed or you can watch it on YouTube. Just search The Bleeders podcast on YouTube or click the link in the episode description. If you want to support the show and level up your own creative practice, check out my upcoming classes and workshops for writers by going to CourtneyKosak.com/teaching. I love helping writers with their craft and career. I am also teaching a year-long memoir incubator starting in September. If you want me to Sherpa you through your process, apply now. And of course, my debut memoir, Girl Gone Wild, is out now. I would love it if you ordered a copy. It really, really helps. I've also got links for that in the episode description. Rate, review, like, comment, subscribe. Until next time, happy bleeding.